Chucky Seasons 1 and 2 were created and written by Don Mancini, the original creator of Chucky way back from 1988 with the classic Child's Play movie. He is the only, from what I know of, the only consistent horror writer throughout an entire franchise of films, aside from that remake which shall not be named at the present moment. Chucky, here's the thing about Chucky, alright? I love Chucky. I was thinking about this the other day, and it's like, there are a few horror franchises that are near and dear to me, alright? Saw is one of them. I love Jigsaw. Ghostface from Scream. I think Scream is a fantastic franchise. And really the biggest competition is Michael Myers. I just really love Michael. But if I had to go with my heart of hearts, I think it's safe to say that Chucky is my favorite horror icon and slasher villain. There's just something about the killer doll that is just way too fun. And the thing is, when it comes to Chucky, it's the only, consistent franchise that has kept a continuity, and despite how crazy that continuity is, and that really comes to a head in this show, it's just so much fun. And there are so many lovable characters, and this show introduces a whole new set of characters that you also fall in love with. So, to me, it's really exciting to be a Chucky fan right now, because there's so much going on in the Chucky world, in the cult, I guess, that makes it great. A little background on me personally. The first horror film that really got me into horror movies was Child's Play 2. I was watching AMC's Fear Fest, watching the TV cut of the movie, which is very similar to the theatrical, minus some of the extended gore. And I fell in love with it. I love kind of dark comedy, gallows humor. That's very much my thing. And those early Chucky movies delivered that. I went back and rewatched Child's Play, and Child's Play 3, which I actually think is underrated. I really love that movie. I know it's Don Mancini's least favorite of the films. I can see why, and I can understand why people don't like that movie, but I quite enjoy it. Bride of Chucky, of course, introduces now a second wave of characters. We're past the Andy and Kyle stuff, and we're on to Jennifer Tilly, Glenn, Glenda, and Tiffany Valentine. And then in the third wave of movies, I guess you could say, you have Curse and Cult, which deal with Nika Pierce and her revelations about Chucky. And, you know, this franchise has constantly shifted, both in terms of character focus and in terms of tone. And that's something I really appreciate about all of these movies. And what's cool is, at the end of Cult of Chucky, which I vividly remember watching for the first time when it came out, I think it's from 2017 if I'm not mistaken. When that movie came out, at the very end, Alex Vincent shows up as Andy and talks. I remember for the first time he talks on the phone to Tiffany. It shows like that split screen, and I went, wow, this is something really special. Seeing these movies cross over. Now, that culmination is this TV show, this series from Sci-Fi. And I gotta tell you, it's awesome. I mean, people were raving about the Spider-Man crossovers from, what was it, Far From Home, No Way Home, whatever. This sweeps the floor with that. I'm sorry. I mean, seeing Kyle and Andy and Nika and all these different Chuckies, Glenn or Glenda, Tiffany, all of these characters coming together, for me, someone who's been a fan for a long time, it's really exciting, and they gave it time. These characters have been apart for a long time, so to see them all come together was awesome. For my 21st birthday party, I actually had the esteemed pleasure of having Alex Vincent actually make a cameo. I don't have any video of it, unfortunately. I'll see if I can pull up some pictures here. This was before the TV show, after Cult of Chucky. And I did not realize that he was going to be reprising his role any further, and I'm really glad he did. I could tell that he was a little apprehensive about maybe jumping back into acting, but I think he did a great job, both in seasons 1 and 2, and delivered on his character. Also, seeing Kyle come back was fantastic. All of these characters reprising their roles were excellent. Even hearing Glenn's voice at the very end of season 2 was fantastic. Now, in this video, I'm going to be talking about both seasons 1 and 2 kind of collectively. Though they differ in terms of location and in terms of the focus of certain characters, if you will, at the end of the day, they're very similar in terms of both their tones and their execution. Like, there's not a quality difference between them. Though there is a little bit of sketchy plot writing stuff I'll talk about at the end of season 2. Nothing too crazy, of course, because Chucky is, and has always been, in my opinion, maybe besides that first movie at least, very lighthearted, and these movies, and Don, I can tell, never take themselves too seriously, and that's something you have to remember going into the show. If you want something really gritty and intense and horrific, Chucky's not it. This show is meant to have fun and poke fun at the idea of Chucky himself and the characters that have found their way into this story. And I think the playfulness of the show is what really made me fall in love with it. And I think I could maybe speak for you too. So for all of those of you who may need a recap out there, this series starts with our protagonist character, Jake, going to a garage yard sale type of thing and actually getting a good guy doll. He is an artist. He makes these really neat sculptures, and he wants to use the doll's head, I think, or at least parts of the good guy doll to make this project of his. Little does he know that the doll is actually Chucky, Charles Lee Ray, the serial killer put into this good guy doll, the kind of running gag motif of this entire franchise, which I think is awesome that he unwillingly got this evil brought into his home. His father, played by Devin Sawa, who comes back in season 2 as the father, the priest character, and it looks like in season 3, the president, which I'm very excited to see how Chucky in the White House plays out. Interesting. It's really neat to see him play these different characters. He's a very good actor, a very great talent, and to see him kind of change up these roles from being this kind of abusive father to, the head runner of this Catholic school and now the president. Very interesting stuff from him. I like to see what Don Mancini's writing for him. But Jake gets this doll, and of course, murders start happening and people start kind of pointing the finger at Jake because everything's happening around him. We kind of get the sense that Jake, in a way, is the new Andy, and that Chucky is trying to set him up to become his, protege, it seems like. His little protege in murder. But of course, Jake constantly is trying to prove Chucky wrong and be the bigger man. There also are a lot of side plots and side characters. Our main 3 characters are Jake, of course, the titular character, Devin, who winds up being Jake's boyfriend, and Lexi, who starts out as this really aggressive bully type, but by the end of season 1 and going in further for season 2, really becomes a great friend to the both of them, which is a nice kind of change of pace from what you might expect from a character archetype like Lexi is. Of course, there's a big elephant in the room here. Don Mancini, the creator of Chucky, is gay, and a lot of the characters and situations that he creates in this franchise deal with homosexuality and the LGBTQ community. Glenn or Glenda was kind of the start of it, I feel like, back in Seed of Chucky. But I suppose in certain ways it was always there, and now it's just kind of been more accepted and put at the forefront of this television show. To me, when it comes to putting any kind of social message or statement you want to place in your show or movie or written material, what have you, the first thing is to make the quality of the show good so your message can be presented. To me, I did not find the inclusion of any of the homosexual, LGBTQ plus messages to be distracting in any way. It went with the characters. I can tell that Mancini himself had a lot to say about this topic, being a gay man and having a lot that he wants to put into this show. In terms of message-wise and kind of his struggles and what he had to face growing up. And you can feel a lot of heart in that. I mean, he pokes, light fun at it, and Chucky kind of acts as an aggressor toward both Jake, Don, and really gay people at large by the end. But it's interesting to see him bring that angle to it. And he does it in a way that doesn't take himself or his message too seriously, even though it is a serious message when it comes to the mental health of those in the LGBTQ+. So, all of that to say, while that is a big kind of underlying theme that's going on, it doesn't rob you of Chuckiness. There's plenty of Chuckiness to go around in this show. A lot of murders. I don't have an official number or anything, but I would imagine that Chucky may kill more people in this show than throughout the movies. Is that a bold statement? I'm not entirely sure. You can fact check me on that. Point is, Chucky was never like Jason with a huge body count. But in this show, there are a lot of murders that go down, and usually they revolve around the three main kids and some of their friends and their parents. Because Chucky's trying to set them up, essentially. In Season 2, same kind of setup, but this time we're in this Catholic school setting environment, which I thought was a really interesting change of pace for this franchise, which largely focuses on kids' rooms and places where a doll would make sense. In Curse of Chucky, I remember the landscape of kind of this gothic, spooky, haunted house seeming like a weird kind of choice, but it worked for that movie, and I think the Catholic school works for Chucky, especially when you understand that the therapist is actually using the doll, one, because of therapy, that it's like a kind of therapy doll, but two, that the therapist is actually evil and working with Chucky, not Prime, but working with the head Chucky, kind of the voodoo cultist Chucky out in the woods. Gets really crazy. You have the kind of voodoo Chucky, the bald one with kind of the lisp. You have Muscle Chucky, and then the Scout Chucky, and then of course Chucky Prime, who is inside of Nika. It gets really confusing, and here's the thing, that I bring this all up to get to this point. This show, if you're not well read on your Chucky lore, could be extremely confusing, and I don't blame anyone if they got really confused during the show. People are constantly switching bodies, especially when you get into the Glenn or Glenda stuff. Can be very confusing. I totally understand it, but I think that was probably intentional, one, for jokes, but two, kind of to show how these characters feel. They're young characters, most of the core ones, even the returning characters. They have a sense of innocent kind of confusion about things. And of course, Chucky just works with that and makes killing out of it. But I like to see kind of the convoluted nature of all of this. Then you take into account the gore and the very graphic violence, and you can really see why this was a perfect fit for the Sci-Fi Channel. The same channel that houses a lot of those Sharknado movies, especially by the end of Season 2, where you got people floating around and blowing up and blood's going everywhere and Chucky's just running around laughing. Definitely makes sense for a sci-fi original show. If all of that sounded a bit rambling, that's because it was. I want to talk now about pros and cons of this series, because I think There are a lot of strengths, couple of weaknesses, but overall the final product is a lot of fun, and if you're a Chucky fan, you're in for the ride. In terms of pros, I think my favorite thing about this show is the playful nature. It breaks the fourth wall in many cases. There is even a segment where Chucky literally is sitting on the couch and kills Liv Morgan. He's talking about his Christmas special. It gets very self-referential, and I find that really fun. In the same way, Don also sets up a lot of great horror movie references that I find awesome if you're a fan of the genre, which I think we all are if we're watching the Chucky show. But to see like references to The Shining or The Exorcist or Silence of the Lambs, it's nice to catch those little beats as they happen. But again, they don't take away from what's happening in the show. It's just added stuff that I think many people will appreciate. Something else I really want to commend Don Mancini for doing, not just in this movie, or in this show, excuse me, but in the movies as well, especially when it comes to the younger characters. There's a tendency for older adult writers, especially like older men in their like 40s or 50s for whatever reason, they can't write young character dialogue. Like, I don't know why. The Slender Man movie was a really bad, good example of that, where it sounds like an older person trying to talk through a young mouth, and it just doesn't work. Don Mancini's dialogue is really on point. It feels natural, it feels real and cohesive, and it allows for the drama to unfold. And speaking of drama, despite how funny Chucky innately is, a killer doll with a serial killer, and he's going around stabbing people and stuff, there are some serious dramatic moments that make you think about things. There are some sad moments too when certain characters get the old axe from the Chuck. And while the show is very tongue-in-cheek in almost every regard, it does allow for actual emotion and for characters to let things play out. And I really like a show that can balance those extremes. In terms of cons of the show, I don't have a ton for you. To me, it's mostly like cheating in the writing to get where you need to get, even though it doesn't entirely make sense. My main example of this is Season 2. Toward the end, the whole show kind of sets up where Chucky has created an organization of other Chuckies, right? He's trying to reclaim and take over to get these kids. And he has this whole elaborate plan. He has a Scout Chucky and the Muscle and the Voodoo Chucky. They're all going to go after this Catholic church, alright? You following? He has this therapist that's going to assist him in breaking into the school. He's been planning this for months, apparently, and he's been torturing Andy out in the woods for like a year. Well, toward the end of the season, he just kind of gives up, and he's like, just bring me to school, I'll just start stabbing random people and just doing what I do. It just seems like he had this great kind of strategic plan and then just says, screw it, at the last minute and just kind of becomes Chucky again. And then later on in the show, there's only one Chucky, and that's Chucky Prime in the doll. Switches out of the therapist and gets back into another doll, and then goes to attack on Christmas for this Season 2 kind of finale. And it just seems like it wasn't really thought out by Chucky. You would think that with only one doll left, maybe this will be explained in Season 3, but with one doll left, I feel like he'd really preserve himself, wait to get more Chuckies out there, and then take these risky moves to kill the kids. Especially with all the planning that he did throughout the rest of the season. So that's kind of my major gripe. It's kind of cheaty writing a bit just to get where we need to get, but I understand why. One, we're working with TV, time constraints, understandable, and two, it's Chucky. Don't take it too seriously. I don't want to have a stick up my butt. I'm just kind of explaining why sometimes it feels like the pacing got faster to wrap up certain plot threads that needed to get wrapped up. But all in all, despite all of this ranting, the Chucky show is phenomenal for a Chucky fan. It has a great blend of emotion and humor, and of course the horror elements are very strong with some very graphic deaths and some very suspenseful scenes, especially when not so much Chucky's killing people, but when he's manipulating people into thinking that either the kids or other characters, even Andy and Kyle to some extent, are crazy and or are murderers. Very fascinating stuff. I will always respect this franchise for having one voice, that being Don, kind of continuing the franchise, and I can't wait to see what Season 3 and beyond holds. As a Chucky fan, it's a great time to be alive. For now, at least. What did you think about Chucky Seasons 1 and 2? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you in Season 3. Remember, for all things Halloween, this is hauntformer.